World War II, humanity's darkest nightmare. 100 powerful historical photos are about to be revealed. Drop a one if you're ready to watch this video all the way through with me. At Duxford Airfield in February 1944, the P-38 Lightning crash was more than a technical mishap. It reminded everyone that war's dangers lingered even in Britain's skies. In London, during summer 1944, bombs fell relentlessly, yet the image of a British soldier rescuing Barbara James from rubble captured humanity's courage amid the chaos of war. Crowds in New York celebrated VE Day joyfully, yet beneath the cheers was remembrance for millions of European soldiers whose sacrifices made victory possible in May 1945. The occupation map of Germany and Austria after 1945 revealed more than territorial lines. It foreshadowed the East-West divide that would ignite the Cold War. The Normandy landings reshaped the war, turning French beaches into lasting symbols of Allied sacrifice, a defining moment forever tied to June 1944. At Duxford, in December 1944, the arrival of new P-51 Mustangs symbolized not just advanced firepower, but renewed Allied hopes for air superiority over war-torn Europe. In 1944 on Saipan, U.S. Marines endured brutal clashes. Yet the island's capture provided a strategic launching point that brought American forces closer to Japan's homeland. Rocket salvos from landing craft shattered Japanese coastal defenses, clearing the way for U.S. troops to storm Mindoro in December 1944 during the Philippines campaign. In Okinawa, 1945, Japanese soldiers driven from caves by smoke grenades surrendered to U.S. Marines, reflecting both the ferocity and desperation of the Pacific War's closing battles. At Dachau after 1945, Roma prisoners stood in roll calls, representing not only Nazi persecution, but also the enduring neglect their suffering faced in post-war memory. At Bernier on Juno Beach in June 1944, Canadian troops stormed ashore, marking one of the crucial assaults that defined the Allied landings on D-Day. Leave a one if you like this video. On June 1944, 9th Air Force bombers struck Pointe du Hoc, delivering punishing blows just days before D-Day to weaken German defenses on the French coast. In September 1938, Hitler greeted Chamberlain in Munich, a moment hailed as peacekeeping, yet ironically paving the path toward the global conflict that erupted soon after. In October 1941, Minsk witnessed Masha Bruskina, a Soviet nurse facing execution, her bravery etched into history as a tragic symbol of resistance against Nazi occupation. At Slapton Sands in 1944, British shores hosted Allied landing rehearsals, turning a quiet Devon beach into a training ground for one of history's most decisive invasions. At Duxford, the 78th Fighter Group's Thunderbolts baseball team found respite from war through sport, a glimpse of camaraderie and morale in August 1944. In July 1944, Hitler appeared with Mussolini at Rastenburg after the failed assassination plot, projecting defiance despite shaken trust among his closest military circles. At Iwo Jima, Aid stations overflowed with wounded Marines, laying bare the devastating human cost of the Pacific Campaign in 1945. The Tehran Conference became a turning point in Allied cooperation as Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill united in December 1943 to chart the course of war's end. The D-Day invasion map revealed Germany's dense coastal defenses, illustrating the monumental obstacles Allied troops were forced to overcome in June 1944. The Normandy invasion map highlighted British and Canadian sectors, showing detailed German defenses that Allied planners confronted before June 1944's decisive assault. Leave 1 if this video makes you feel the brutality of war. 0 if you don't like it. On June 1944, Allied troops stormed Gold, Juno, and Sword Beaches, turning D-Day into an irreversible moment that shifted the balance of World War II. At the Kremlin in August 1939, Stalin and Ribbentrop's handshake sealed the non-aggression pact, unleashing a shadow that plunged Europe into global war. On June 1942, Douglas Devastators aboard USS Enterprise prepared for launch at Midway, heralding a pivotal naval clash that shifted momentum in the Pacific. In April 1945, Fritz Klein stood at Bergen-Belson's mass grave, a chilling reminder of Nazi crimes exposed after the camp's liberation by British forces. In 1948, Philippe Haussmann's Dali Atomicus transcended traditional photography, blending surreal chaos with meticulous timing to redefine modern art's relationship with the camera. At Caen in 1944, British sniper Private Sutcliffe watched from a window, scanning carefully for hidden enemy marksmen during the brutal battles in Normandy. American B-24 Liberators flew toward Germany in 1944, symbolizing both destruction and the Allies' determination to end the war through overwhelming air power. On November 19, 18, London crowds filled the streets near the Bank of England, celebrating the armistice that ended the First World War's devastating conflict. Over Sur-Mer in Pas-de-Calais, France, bombs rained down on an airfield, a stark reminder of the devastating reach of wartime aerial assaults. In Lisieux, 1944, a French civilian pouring cider for a Bren gunner symbolized fleeting warmth and gratitude amid the harsh realities of wartime occupation. At Cape Gloucester in late 1943, U.S. Marines unleashed heavy artillery on Japanese strongholds, embodying the brutal rhythm of the Pacific Island hopping campaign. In 1943 at Tarawa, U.S. forces stormed the Gilbert Islands, suffering staggering losses to secure a small yet strategically vital foothold in the Pacific. In early 1944, Erwin Rommel inspected Germany's western defenses, a moment reflecting his desperate bid to prepare against the looming Allied invasion. In early 1945, Manila lay in ruins, devastation marking the city's liberation by Allied forces after fierce battles against entrenched Japanese defenders. At Yalta in 1945, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin convened, shaping Europe's post-war order while planting the seeds of future Cold War divisions. In 1945 at Kelberg, a U.S. soldier examined a damaged German Panther. Mark V tank, stark evidence of Nazi armor's decline in the war's final months. In February 1945, U.S. Coast Guard vessels landed supplies on Iwo Jima's beaches, sustaining Marines through one of the Pacific's bloodiest campaigns. On Okinawa in May 1945, U.S. Marines secured ridges near Naha, underscoring the ferocity of the Pacific's final, most desperate battle. German troops executing Polish civilians captured the Nazi regime's ultimate brutality, atrocities that history refuses to forget, even after 1945's war ended. American landing craft carried troops to contested shores, illustrating how naval transport proved indispensable in executing large-scale amphibious invasions. German prisoners marched past Special Forces command post at Point, depicting the shift of control in Normandy following Allied landings in June 1944. Casualties during the Normandy invasion reached staggering levels, reminding us of the blood price Allied soldiers paid to breach Europe's defenses. Ambulances rolled along the Mulberry Whale floating pier near Arromanches, providing critical evacuation routes for wounded soldiers throughout the Normandy campaign. Reserve troops from Canada's 3rd Division landed at Bernier on Juno Beach, June 1944, showcasing strategic reinforcement for Allied breakthroughs on D-Day. U.S. Marines of 2nd Battalion, 27th Regiment paused on Iwo Jima's shore in February 1945, reflecting the tense moments of anticipation that followed the bloody landing. On Time's November 1930 cover, Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia appeared as a global figure, embodying modernization, national pride, and the unyielding struggle for sovereignty. In 1930, Francisco Franco stood as a rising Spanish officer, foreshadowing his eventual role as dictator, whose regime would dominate and define Spain's turbulent 20th century. In March 1938, just days after the Anschluss, massive Vienna crowds cheered Nazi troops, exposing the dangerous allure of fascism before Europe descended into devastating war. During the Nanking Massacre of 1937-38, a Chinese prisoner faced imminent beheading by a Japanese officer, a haunting image symbolizing the unforgivable brutality of wartime atrocities. Over Kent in August 1940, 4 Bolton-Paul Defiants from Squadron 264 flew in formation, though one aircraft would soon fall victim to German Bf-109 fighters. At Guadalcanal in 1942, U.S. Marines rested briefly in the field, a rare pause during the grueling campaign that tested endurance as much as courage. In February 1945, Dresden lay in ruins after relentless bombing raids, symbolizing the terrifying scale of destruction unleashed upon Europe's cities during the war. During World War II, the B-29 Superfortress soared through the skies, embodying America's advanced air power and heralding a new era of strategic bombing campaigns. In October 1942, outside the Mazoch ghetto, German forces executed surviving Jewish women, exposing the merciless brutality and genocidal horror of the Holocaust. At Okinawa in 1945, Japan conscripted 1,780 boys aged 14 to 17 into the Blood and Iron Corps, revealing the desperate extremes of a crumbling empire. Nagasaki in 1945, shown before and after the atomic bombing, captured devastation on an unprecedented scale, turning the city into a lasting symbol of loss and controversy. At Wheatfield, New York, Bell Aircraft's factory assembled countless P-39 Airacobras during the war, showcasing America's immense industrial might, fueling Allied victory. During World War II, a U.S. Office of Price Administration poster promoted rationing, urging citizens to resist hoarding and embrace fairness in the nation's wartime sacrifices. At Auschwitz-Birkenau in May 1944, Hungarian Jews faced brutal selection. Some sent to forced labor, others condemned immediately to the gas chambers.